Mike is in July.
Mike's in July.
Yeah,
Oh,
Barry,
okay.
yeah, Barry's filling Carolyn Williams' position.
Oh.
Yeah.
Alright,
Yep.
so Barry, you'll come on up.
With official, to be officially appointed yet?
You appoint him before he takes the oath?
So, well, I read it to you and then you repeat, so I'll read a couple sentences. I do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
Solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of library trustee according to the best of my ability.
of library trustee according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You gotta sign this too, and you do, I believe.
I do think we have to appoint him because his term doesn't start until July.
Okay. That makes sense.
What is
They
most
voted
term?
someone, they voted him in, if they're elected to a term that starts in July and finishes out the. There's a vacancy, you appoint him.
I think you gotta appoint him for the month.
Yeah.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Give him one of his votes to count.
Go with that. So then, I guess the first motion of the day on the table is a motion to appoint.
Yeah, I need a motion to appoint Barry as trustee.
Motion by Chris, second by Jason. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Not to my knowledge.
So she's still on.
She's technically seven, I guess. Yeah, she's not seven anyways.
It always works better if it's on.
If it's on.
All right, you are.
Thank you.
Okay, so, first item is, any public input? Anyone? Okay, so then we have the treasurer's report. Carol, welcome. It was a pleasure to see you. You want to on my seat? You want to sit down?
Dude,
Sure.
No deal, female. Treasury report for the 11 months ended May. Yeah, I see, I hear you, I can't talk, so I'm looking down. We're pretty much on track revenue-wise. You can see that we are about 100,000 under budget. Most of that is the grant that we didn't anticipate receiving, and those monies are gonna be down in the expense lines as well. So we're really on track budget-wise, revenue-wise. For expense purposes, if you go all the way down to the bottom, you'll see we're under for expenditures. It shows by 604. However, 489 of that, so let's say a nice 490, is capital improvements, which we shouldn't be spending. So we're actually under budget for expenditures of about $100,000. That's spread fairly evenly among most of the accounts. There's no account that's a giant amount under budget. We haven't bought some computer supplies, which maybe we're gonna buy towards the end of the year. But for the most part, as you scroll down and look through the expenditures, you're not gonna see any one expenditure that's significantly under budget. But again, we are about $100,000 under budget in total for all of the expense accounts through May. We had talked about materials, I think, the last 2 months. We're still a little bit over budget, but
We're gonna be fine.
same
by the end.
speech, yeah, same speech again, where we don't really buy at the end, yada yada. And our monthly budget, $35,000 for that, so we have plenty of room to make up for the small shortfall that we're currently over budget in materials. And again, as a whole, expenditure is under budget, so even if we ended up a little over budget in materials, we're not gonna be over budget as a whole.
Are we gonna be paying for the heat pumps before July?
No, I doubt it, since they're, in my report, it says that the earliest that any will arrive is July 17th, so. And Carol, I'm trying to remember, but I think that the heat pumps bill is 50/50, right? And we paid 50 and we pay the other 50 upon completion, is that correct?
I don't know the exact amount, but
It's 50%.
Right.
It's 2 payments of 50%, right?
Right.
And have we made one, I believe?
I think we make the deposit payment.
Okay, so we haven't even,
Are we planning to do that in June?
I mean, we can call them and get billed if you'd like.
I think it makes more sense
Mhm.
to be in this
Cap
budget.
reserve is like
We
long.
budgeted for it.
Yeah.
So why not cut the check for June 30th?
Okay. See if we can pay for some, the first half.
I'm sure they'll take it.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
I don't think they'll turn it down.
Yeah.
Carol and I were actually just talking before the meeting tonight that for the June meeting, we're gonna make sure that you can see everything that was bought, that's a capital item, that's an asset, that is currently on the balance sheet, because for accrual purposes, you're gonna put it onto the balance sheet. But we wanna make sure you guys can see it from a cash standpoint, so that we've outlaid that money during the current fiscal year. You can see what we've actually spent during this fiscal year that's gone up onto the balance sheet. So you can see against the budget, what's been spent out of that budget line item. I don't anticipate it being anything startling to anyone, but just so you can see that it's there, that we have actually spent some money on capital items this year, as opposed to usually what you just see is a budget number and then zeros, because it all goes up onto the balance sheet.
We're way under on consulting fees, and I assume that's gonna be Paul Mays. Is he gonna be paid out by the end of this year? Any more money, do we know?
I've been initialing invoices from him
No,
fairly regularly.
he's already been,
Yeah.
he's been expensed. What has not been expensed is the heat pump
The heat pump
consultant.
consulting fee.
Oh,
The heat
okay.
pump
Okay.
consultant
That's
has not been expensed yet.
And then the other one
We're
is
gonna
like,
get that expense too.
the other one I see it's way under is computer parts and supplies.
You'll see part of that come down off of the balance sheet next month,
Okay.
because there have been some purchases.
Oh, okay. Any questions?
One thing I think would be good for the budget is to, have like an asterisk, the heat pumps, how much more has to be spent, most likely,
Mhm.
that we have budgeted for.
Yeah.
And if there's consultant fees that we didn't pay, we do the same thing.
Anything that's significant.
Yeah, anything that's significant.
Yeah.
That'd be nice to see.
Alright, thank you. Can I get a motion of adopting the treasurer's report? Second? Peter? All's in favor? Opposed? Alright, adopted. I don't have the check register.
Check registry should be there.
No.
It's in the,
Yeah.
on the back.
Well, someone else. Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, okay. Has everyone looked at that? You wanna give it a minute? Okay. Speaking of which, checks there for the sign.
I haven't seen it. Maybe she's going to.
She's bringing them.
Oh, alright.
They're coming.
Alright.
She's bringing them.
Don't wanna be stuck here when you guys are all at the bar and I'm still signing. Okay. Check register by Barbara, second by Chris. All those in favor? Opposed? Alright, adopted.
Alright, now, thanks guys.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Carol.
Carol.
Okay, committee reports, building and grounds.
We haven't had any.
But you have some stuff to bring up.
Sure.
I think I have something to bring up that.
Okay, I'll just bring up the, kind of the highlights of, buildings and grounds. We haven't had a meeting, but, I've certainly been spending a lot of time on buildings and grounds. And Jason, to his credit, has asked me if I wanted to have a meeting, but, haven't really brought anything to a head where we needed to discuss it. So, we had a number of recommendations from the G3, the Going Green Globally, effort at the U Albany. And one of them, was basically that we found out that our solar panels are probably performing at about 3% of ideal efficiency. So, now, the MBA students that we were working with were only here for 2 weeks, and they, as I said to their leaders on Wednesday at a meeting, they called in a consultant, a solar company, to assess what was going on. But they called in a company whose primary interest is in selling solar installations. So we're taking a step back and trying to get someone in who can look at it objectively, who isn't going to, we'd like to know what the best thing to do is in order to generate the most electricity and save the most money. We know what this one company has recommended, but it doesn't seem wise business to just go with their recommendation. So, so that's where that stands. I'm working with Lou to get a couple other companies and an overall energy engineer up there in short, one of the interesting things about it, there's 108 panels up there, and when they were put in 2009, the way that panels worked is that if, let's say, the second panel out of 108 developed a problem, it means that the next 106 panels in the chain cannot generate. Now, when you put panels in, every 2 panels go to one inverter, or into an inverter in groups of 2, as opposed to in groups of 108. It was the opinion of Castleman Solar, the company that they brought in, that besides that issue, there's significant degradation across the board. And they weren't surprised by that with panels that were put in 2009. So that's one thing. I might as well go from there to say that solar energy is one of 4 things I'm trying to convince the state ed department that we could do for the construction grant program without an engineering review, because there's no way we're going to get an engineering review finished by September 1, which is the deadline for that. The other 3 are replacement of all 10 toilets in the building with low flow toilets, which would save us about 80% of our water use. It's a great project, but it's only going to cost about $5,000, so it's almost not worth doing all the paperwork to try to get half of that, although I think I would probably do it anyway, just to get the $2,500 or whatever it would be. Enhancing the sound systems in the Helderberg and Norman Skill Room with modern speaker system plus a sound loop for the disabled or hearing people with some hearing loss impaired. And lastly, there's a project that Sean and I have kicked around a little bit of putting, I don't quite know the right term, but sort of a cell phone booster on the roof, which would mean that everybody's, no matter who your service is, you get good service in here. And that's about a $25,000.
Is that a problem that?
It is a little bit of a problem. And so,
We discussed that a few times.
yeah, we've discussed it a few times. What I'm looking for with the construction grant is something my state ed will let me do without an engineer. And quite frankly, I'm not real hopeful that there is any project that state ed will let me do.
Is there a problem with when people are all gabbing on their cell phone, that they're disturbing other patrons?
Well, it's not just for talking, it's for data connections and all that kind of stuff too. But I don't personally perceive a significant problem in the building with that. Kind of looking over at staff members.
I
So,
know.
yeah, so,
It's like,
but anyway, so it's really more for, people to send texts and to send emails to each other and so forth. So, other things that are about buildings and grounds in here, we talked about the construction grant a little bit. I hope you all had a time to read the Altamont Enterprise article about the small turn lane over on Western Avenue. Certainly a step in the right direction, but as anyone who lives to the left, such as myself, say what?
Even with that,
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
very,
I saw it twice though.
very
Much
small.
better.
Yeah.
Much better to have that, so,
Have you used it yet?
twice, yeah.
What'd you think?
I liked it better than not having it.
Alright, I
Me
don't,
too.
I feel like you're better off just waiting,
we're going right.
Yeah.
Or turning right,
Yeah.
yeah. So, anyway, technical building systems, on another front is the subcontractor putting in the building management system for the new heat pumps. They have been, it's amazing to me, running wires through our ceiling for, I want to say about at least 4 weeks, if not 6. And they're still running. All while they await the arrival of the heat pumps. There's an important point in here in this report that the new building management system will be installed first, and then one by one, the 26 heat pumps will be converted to it. So we will be running 2 HVAC systems during the summer. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, so, I've been in touch with my counterpart over at Bethlehem who just replaced theirs, and we're going to probably have to relax our dress code and so forth. It could get hot. So, but if it works right, it's only hot in the place where they're replacing the heat pump right then. So keep your fingers crossed. So let's see, other buildings and grounds related stuff. I think that might be it.
Has there been any thought of asking for a grant from the county legislature for the toilets?
That's a good idea. It's about the right size. I think Dennis Feeney would be, yeah, right. That's a good idea. Do you happen to know that it's the time to be approaching?
I
Okay.
don't know.
Okay, Dennis is actually one of the people who's gonna scoop ice cream for us on June 28th.
I'm sure he could.
Sure, okay, good thought. Because any too much more money than that, and they don't wanna, from the county, they don't wanna do it, so. Okay. Sure.
When they were originally put up there, NYSERDA was involved.
Right.
Now, can they be involved again?
Yes, the construction grant people are real weird about repairs versus replacements. And you have to be very careful which word you use. But if you are replacing, then there's grant funding to defray some of that, for sure. If you're repairing, I don't know if NYSERDA would be interested in that. I can check them, you know.
The other
So,
question I have, do we own those now?
we
or-
do, yeah.
So we actually own them, because now companies,
Lease them, right? So,
well, or they actually own the things, they come, they repair, they take the snow off of them, at least at home installations. So, I don't
about
know
that.
how they make their money, but I know that's what some of them do. So,
It's a good question, because the other thing is, you know, while we have this big open expansive roof, a lot of people are now just, you know, buying into a solar farm, so maybe we don't have to have stuff on our roof that, you know, and that's the kind of thing that when they brought in that solar company from the G3, they're not necessarily gonna tell you that, because they want to sell you a system, you know, so. It's gonna take a lot of work, though, to figure out what to do, and obviously I wanna do it, but, it's,
now they are going to continue their study to do that?
the kids, no, the kids have already gotten their credit and moved on, so.
It didn't seem like, you know, we really got all that much.
I I feel like we got a lot of,
I was gonna say, so, weren't we supposed to get $100,000 savings on, we don't pay them as much, or?
well, we paid them 1,000, which we, you guys decided as a board to do. And if you read their report, which I just got yesterday morning, and haven't read yet, but I saw them present it, 3 weeks ago, I think, down at New Albany, and they came up with more than 100,000.
Okay.
I didn't put it,
Where
you
was
know,
the 100,000?
mostly in the solar panels, you know, the money that you would generate, yeah. Yeah, and it was over a 4-year period of time and so forth, but, you know, I don't know, like the toilets,
Couldn't figure that out?
well,
What's it cost to replace them, did they say?
the Castleman estimate was 104,000, so.
It's 104,000 to save.
100,000 over 4 years, yeah, so, yep, so, but the toilet thing, and I refer to it in here, for example, like, the $1,000 we spent, even if you just took this toilet idea, which Lou came up with,
Well,
right?
that's what they
Yeah,
came up with that one.
you know, it got people thinking, what are we doing here? And looking at what we're doing with a different outlook, and that's worth $1,000 in my book, you know. For the 5 of us that, many of whom are in the room, Sean, Carol, Margaret, myself, everyone but Lou's in the room, you know, we got a whole new look on our operation. I think that, I'd spend $1,000 for that again,
Yeah.
you know. Some people do this G3 thing twice, usually skipping a year in between. My mind isn't made up about that, but, I want to try to work on implementing something that they have recommended before I think about doing it again. But, I think it was worthwhile effort myself.
Everybody should get Amazon credit card and get 5% back.
I certainly Googled it at home,
I have it.
so, yeah.
It's a big savings.
So that's my buildings and grounds report.
Okay, I wanted to bring up something, so we still don't have the finalized conceptual designs for the,
For the
expansion?
expansion, no, and I have met twice with Paul since we met, And one of the questions you guys asked last month was, what's the difference between the drawings we're seeing and the master plan? And, as he refers to it, and the master plan is basically everything that he's delivered visually or in writing, all put together and presented to you. Now, honestly, I don't know when he wanted to present it to you. I'll check on that. And then, he would like a vote as soon as he can get one, and because we don't meet in August, we were thinking that September would be the time to do that. So for example, when you look at those drawings that we've all seen.
If you can present to us before the July meeting, it's possible.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think for something as big as this, I think I'd be willing to schedule a separate meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. I think we should have something before the July meeting.
And what about the tax day? You guys were gonna put together something to show, about how much you pay in taxes, how much it's gonna increase based on, 2 or 3 different,
I'm still working on that. I need to get some data from the town.
okay.
We'll have it next meeting.
Okay. So I'll call Paul and find out when he could, how soon he'd be ready, and then you and I could work on scheduling a meeting for that. Okay.
Can you guys get Barry's stuff on this? Because it's so important. I just want him to have everything that we have, which obviously not right now, but I want you to be caught up to speed as best you can with obviously this very major project.
Barry, the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
And Mike too,
Yeah.
What if Barry, Mike, and I met about it, and we gave you some documents?
That might be,
Yeah,
that would be a
sounds
really good
good.
idea, to get them up to speed.
We're, as they both know, we're scheduled to do an orientation on June 27th, right? So, to me, that's close enough. We could just meet then unless you guys want me to meet with these fellows.
No,
for-
that's
so-
fine, I don't need to.
Okay.
follow
Are they
that.
scheduled to be on Hudson or?
No, they don't even know about that
No.
yet. But first of all, thanks for running for the board. One of the things that Upper Hudson recommends strongly is that you both go through something called core trustee training. Oh, you saw it, okay. And I think it's maybe 2 or 3 hours. They'll do it. They have usually 4 days a year when they will do it at Upper Hudson. Or if you want, Tim will probably come out and do it here with you guys. And I like to go through it sometimes myself just as a refresher. And I don't know if I'll get any takers, but it's always a good idea for board members to go through it again and kind of get reminded about things. So we'll work on getting to that too.
To go along with that though, so we have a design steering committee which is made up of a couple board members, community members. I want to create a new committee that is going to kind of shepherd this, if we go ahead with this expansion, shepherd this expansion. I think the Building and Grounds Committee is great, but I think I want to pick people that are really, really into this expansion and are willing to give as much time as they can give to get this across the line or get the information out there. So I'm contemplating, or I'm going to create a new committee based on the Design Steering Committee, likely to be made up of basically everyone from the Design Steering Committee and a couple more board members, because this is the board's project. We should have quite a bit of say on this committee. So if you would be interested, I'm not going to appoint it tonight. If you would be interested, let me know. Now, later, send me an email. But I'm going to appoint this committee, and our board has to be the one steering this. But we certainly have staff on the committee, and we have just a couple people from the general public on it as well. But
Let me suggest that since the Design Steering Committee meets on June 20th, which is next Wednesday, is it at all possible for you to ask these folks to express interest prior to
yes,
this?
please.
Okay.
So if you're interested, email me, let me know. But that's the deadline because you have to go to that meeting. So, or at least let me know by that meeting. So thank you for that.
Is there a board mailing list or anything?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, an email, like an email?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Actually, what is it? Just email.
Board members at gilderlandlibrary.org, I believe. Do you happen to know, Sean? Off the top of my head, I don't know. Okay.
We'll get it. We'll get the information. You'll get on that list.
Thanks.
Yeah.
As I said, is that set in stone?
If we move that, it'll just add delays,
What's that in stone?
Because
The June 20th.
Paul's got his schedule.
Paul's a tough guy to schedule.
Okay.
this is gonna be the committee that really takes hold of the project. So if you want on this project, and I hope you do, this is gonna be the committee that really takes the bull by the horn. So, let me know. All right, that's all I had for building and grounds. So essentially, I'm taking away the project from building and grounds to this new committee. So building and grounds really won't be involved with this project going forward. So, all right, that's all I got. Finance?
I would just say we have to vote on that committee.
The creation of that committee?
I think so.
Okay.
For right now?
We
Motion
don't-
to
we don't
vote?
have,
We don't know who's in it.
we don't know who's in it, so we have to do it next
I
week.
think we have to vote on it, don't we?
I think
Can we create the,
creation of
vote on it and then
the,
pick?
did we vote on the design steering?
Well, that's an ad hoc committee. although
This would all
be-
essentially be, but I think, I looked at the bylaws when I first thought about this, and I think even ad hoc committees we have to vote on. I think you're right, but I have to go look in the bylaws.
And this is gonna be something that has oversight of the whole thing. I think we should. vote.
I'm totally fine with that. We'll vote on it next
I
meeting.
think it's okay for everybody to come
Yeah.
to the June 20th
Yes,
meeting
yeah.
who's been appointed or whatever.
Yeah,
I think we should
agreed.
vote on it in July.
It's
Totally
of course
agree with
okay
that.
for any board member or staff member to come to the June 20th
Come to the
meeting.
meeting.
Yeah.
Yep, agreed, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, finance committee.
We just met, went over treasurer's role, and,
And?
so we wanted somebody to oversee reconciling bank statements,
Okay.
other than someone who cuts checks. So we came up with a plan.
Are you ready to present tonight, or are you gonna wait a minute?
I guess.
Fine with me.
I guess so. Right. So, Dave is going to, people only see that because Dave does not write checks, right?
Right.
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 He's gonna take that on.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
And then we went over with Carol, the role of treasurer, and so the treasurer, she's gonna basically do what she's been doing, but also, like, oversee that reconciling by reviewing those records
Okay.
periodically.
She-
Make sure that Dave's doing.
And she's good with that, she's fine with that, she liked the direction? Okay.
Yes. And there's also supposed to be, we've read through this stuff, that, a board member is supposed to be like a fiscal officer type of role. So we just figured whoever's in charge of the finance committee is that role.
Perfect, that's great, that's exactly what I would've done.
Yeah. So we just met right before this.
Do any of those, do you think need board approval?
No, I think because the board votes on all the committees, that that's fine.
Okay.
We vote on that in September, I think, right? I think they present them in July.
Okay, thank you guys. That's very good. All right, anything else?
No.
All right, personnel, labor management?
Personal labor management.
Policy, I know Karen's not here, but it looks like you did do some policy work?
Yeah, I'm
There
gonna.
was one other thing,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
just
okay,
remember.
yep.
It wasn't a finance committee necessarily, but we met about, we also talked about, Tim and I and Carol, they talked about, the cap reserve, yes. And so I think Carol, you were looking to, we were wanting to put the proper amount of money in the cap reserve, right? Based upon what we've saved since we put the was it 410? In there, so, we're looking into that too.
Consolidating the accounts too.
Well, each budget, we've had a certain amount in there since then, I think 2016, 17, 18, I think it is. So there should be larger amounts of force put in there. So,
Right.
we're checking that out, making sure.
All right, that's good.
I guess one other thing I'd mention under finance, which we didn't discuss between 6 and 7 today, but which we've been working on, is that Dave is heading up, or maybe it's Dave and Carol, but they're working on the balance sheet and properly making sure that the capital assets on the balance sheet that have depreciated get removed from the balance sheet to get a truer picture of what, the cash reserve? Is that what you get a truer picture of?
Basically to take off the books anything that's no longer in service.
Right.
That's, and most of that would be fully depreciated.
Yeah. And I, as an editorial comment, you know, and strike me dead if I say the wrong thing, but it's the kind of thing that you can do when you have qualified fiscal officers and that we weren't able to do and didn't know that we needed to do when we had a bookkeeper. So I thank you for ramping our fiscal operation up over the last few years, because otherwise you're just leaving this giant mess behind that that isn't right. So
Thank you for all you do. I know we did leave you guys with a pile of work over there in the finance, so thank you for everything. Okay.
oh, so policy.
Policy, yes.
I'm going to try to address what's going on with policy, and Jenna and Margaret have been doing a lot of work on it, so you correct me. I'm trying to speak because I think you would rather I do rather than you, right?
Yoko stays in the corner.
Oh, so there are these two policies, actually 4 policies, if you will, related to rules of behavior in the library and intellectual freedom. And they're very, they parallel in an interesting way. So we have 2 rules policies, one of which is called rules, and the other of which is called rules for public behavior. The rules policy, I kid you not, is either 1 or 2 sentences long and says the library has rules, see the rules for public behavior policy. So we've talked to Karen and we're going to recommend that that policy, the first one, simply disappear, and the second one can serve. The intellectual freedom one is, I believe, more of a matter of there's a policy on intellectual freedom and a form for people to fill out if they have a concern related to intellectual freedom, and you guys are recommending putting those 2 instead of 2 policies into 1.
Actually, the policy is repeated on the form, so you don't
Okay.
really need a separate policy and a separate form.
Right.
You just do it both together.
Okay, so there's that. And those were our kind of baby steps because, you know, frankly, it's always a good idea to be reviewing policies, but it's hard to find the time to do it. You know?
Well, next up is the program policy, which will be new.
Right, right. So we have drafted a very first draft of policy on programming, which I believe was suggested by the department heads in programming, correct?
Mhm.
So I just read that this morning, Margaret. I don't know when you drafted it, but when we meet as a committee, we'll take a look at that. And I thought it was a pretty good first draft myself. But can you speak to why it was felt that we needed a programming policy?
Well, I think they are more comfortable following guidelines, and so they're looking for something that will steer them in the right direction when they're looking for topical programs.
Right,
And
right.
what appeals to the community.
Sure. So
Yeah.
it just basically,
Because, and it also outlines, I'm sorry,
Sure.
but the board designates you in charge of programming, which is then delegated to the department heads.
right, okay. So basically, it just, you know, to be honest, what I read today just kind of clarifies what we do now, but gives it the weight of the board authority.
Mm-hmm.
That it's a good thing to do what we do now. So that's drafted and we'll put it before the committee. The rules and the intellectual freedom, we really can't advance those tonight because we haven't had a committee meeting.
Correct.
Or, committee meeting, so. But those were easy picking when we looked at, you know. Yeah, and we have to do that through committee, right? So, you know, it's just hard scheduling committee meetings, no matter what committee you're talking about. You know, it's and just as an aside, may not work for board members, but anytime you guys want to meet during the day, you let me know. I will be happy to make that happen. So, including at 8 a.m. You know, knock something out between 8 and 9, and not have to come in the evening. That's great. So, that was policy.
Policy, okay.
Upper Hudson Library System, the Upper Hudson Gala is next week. And there are a few of us signed up for that, you know, not very many, but there are a few of us signed up. And Tim Burke says they will have assigned seating, you know, tables this year, so we can all sit together. Instead of, like last year, they had people at 7 or 8 different tables, and it was kind of a mess. At this time, and you know, they expect, you know, be good, you know, performance at the Troy, okay, what is it?
Hilton Gardens.
Hilton Gardens, and there's room at the Hilton Gardens for displays, so there may be some displays like there wasn't at the Albany. So, you know, we'll see what happens. You know, the Upper Hudson staff is working hard on that.
Sure. Is that it?
Yeah, because there was no meeting
Okay.
this month of the Upper Hudson Library System because of a lot of the work was all done last month with the meeting of the committees and the decision as to the awards and things.
Thank you, Herb, for serving on that committee. Any questions? All right, foundation, Chris?
Yeah, we had, what's the speaker's name?
Davy Johnson?
I mean, the local one.
Oh, Paul Grondo and,
No, Peter Gold.
Peter Gold.
Oh, Peter Gold.
Peter Gold, we had an event for Peter Gold, just before the foundation. He was very interesting, he did a great job, wasn't a great attendance, but it was very, very good. And Davy Johnson, they lined up to do.
What, you missed the email.
Oh, is that happening?
Davy Johnson pulled out today.
Oh,
So,
bummer.
yeah, so on, interestingly, we moved the July 19th board meeting to July 24th because of that. You guys can decide if you wish whether you want to move it back. Although I'm not sure there's a room that night, but for us to meet. So Mr. Johnson is 75 years old and lives in Florida, and he did a 4-day book tour in New York City with about 5 or 6 events a day, and just basically got exhausted. And so the All-Star Game is in Washington, D.C. in mid-July, and he's coming up for that, and then he was going to go to Cooperstown and Guilderland to do a book signing, but he's cut off the Cooperstown and Guilderland part and said, I'm just going back to Florida. And, you know, he's a good judge of his own stamina.
Maybe we can replace him with Keith Hernandez.
We are trying to get Keith, so, you know, that would be nice.
Ron Darling, you need a spot there.
I wish they'd come together, you know, that'd be a big, so, anyway. But Jake and Mike are trying to get Keith Hernandez.
And then, of course, the gala is the big push. I hope everybody's signed up for, to be on the honorary committee. Not, it's important to do that. I don't know if you're aware of the gala.
I have no idea what
Okay,
it is.
so the foundation is the fundraising arm of the library, right? So we have a big dinner dance the foundation does each year to raise money for the library. And this year's date is
September 29th.
September 29th.
It's a masquerade ball.
The tickets for that are $75 each, but there's an honorary committee that's $100 each.
Right.
And so you're just paying a little extra more to help support a little better.
And get your name on the
Get your
program.
name on the program.
Where is it?
Albany Country Club.
Yep. It's this year's theme is the masquerade.
Ball.
Which I think the idea is to dress up as
Literary
characters.
The honorees are Paul
But you
Grandal
don't have to.
and
And I probably won't go.
Gregory McGuire. And I'm told that they asked them both, hoping that one would say yes, and then they both said yes. So that's pretty nice. Something else about that. Oh, the tickets for the public are going on sale on June 15th, correct, Mark?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
So there's about 180 of them, and they'll sell out fast. So, you know, as board members and foundation members, you don't want to be shut out of your own event. So there's a link on the website, right, Mark?
Yeah,
buy tickets.
it'll be up there tomorrow night.
Yep.
Mark, do you have any idea whether there's any possibility of being on the honorary committee?
Say again, sir?
Is there any possibility of being on the honorary committee still, or?
I'll take your check tonight.
Yeah, there you go. So,
Then, Mark, we'll get our tickets in the mail, we've already signed up for the honorary committee, or what?
No, we're not actually going to have physical tickets. You'll know that you've paid, you'll get your receipt through the website, and we'll have your name at the door. That's the way we've done it in the past, and it's been pretty successful in the past. We haven't had any crashers yet.
Well, with a masquerade ball, you won't know.
Yeah.
You know, we hadn't thought of that. That might be a problem. Literally, who is that masked guest? Yes.
who are you, Tom Sawyer?
Chris, so we have to appoint their board. I couldn't remember if we have to appoint it at our annual meeting or theirs. Oh, so it's theirs, all right, so we have some time. I just wanna make sure that we were on that, 'cause we were kind of set stuff for a while, so okay, so it's not for a while, okay.
Just a quick thought, that isn't foundation related, but is fundraising related. So there's a group called the Staff Committee that does events to try to raise money so that the staff can do functions like Staff Development Day, and birthday cakes and things like that, retirements. And so we are trying to sell 17 more tickets to the Valley Cats game on Saturday, June 30th, which is Star Wars night and is a fireworks night. The tickets are $10 each, and they're available at the Circ Desk. So if you, I know several board members have already bought tickets, but if you haven't, please consider joining us that night. And we've broken even on that event. We, in fact, have made $30 on the event, but we'd like to make, about 100. So if we can sell those other 17 tickets, life is good. If you were with us in last year, which was kind of a mess because it was rained out 4 times, last year's ticket was a little more expensive, I think maybe even $5 more expensive, because we bought into their buffet concept. But then once we actually got there for games where it wasn't raining, pretty much everyone associated with the Guilderland Library community was unimpressed by the buffet. So we decided not to purchase into the buffet, so it's just a $10 game ticket. The seats are behind home plate in the foul ball screened area if you have kids and you're concerned about getting hit by a foul ball. So please join us.
Exciting.
Should I go into
How many
directors?
tickets did we get?
We got 50, and we, put them on sale to our own community, staff, board, foundation, have sold 33. Mark is just about to put I think it's in this week's press release and Facebook and such. We should be able to sell the other 17, but we'd rather sell them to you.
So we can see where the seats are there.
Yeah, there's a little spreadsheet at the Circ Desk, and you can see who you want to sit next to or behind.
There wasn't the last week or the week before, there was nothing in the Altamont Enterprise in the Guilderland Library.
Really? Interesting. We send it every week, so.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I did not notice that.
Because I would like to read it.
We got overtaken by events or something. I don't know. But that's a good question when Mark comes back in, but I didn't notice. By the time it's, by the time it's in the paper, I've read it twice, so I don't read it in the paper, but I do read the paper.
All right, does anyone have anything else on foundation they wanna ask, bring up?
Speaking of the Enterprise, Rosemary had a nice letter about the gala in the paper this week, I think, so.
Okay, all right, that's, Tim?
Directors, so a lot of what I was gonna highlight has to do with buildings and grounds. I'm just psyched that we won again, 69 to I think 35 or 32 or something like that. I guess 31 would be the most it could be. But that's great. Last year we did win by 72 to 28, I guess. So, you know, a slight tick backwards for the first time in the last 5 years. But as I say in the report, I believe it is our excellent staff. Not a day goes by that I don't receive a compliment about our staff. I didn't even get here till about 4:30 today because I usually come in at 1 for board meeting days, and then Ben had some medical stuff this afternoon, and I got a compliment on our staff before I even got to work today. So, although I suppose when you get to work at 4:30. But anyway, it's the interactions of the staff with the public that I think puts the face on the library and makes people vote yes or vote no. So I'm thrilled about that. Despite not being
Including you, Ken, by the way.
oh, well, thank you. But despite not being very hopeful about the construction grant program for this year, I did go to an excellent workshop with Tim Burke on that. We already talked about Western Avenue a little bit. And I guess lastly, to continue the staff theme and the staff development day theme, I thought we had a really good staff development day on June 6th. I thank you for the continued closure that you do. I think it's, I know we don't want to do this, but I think if we could do it twice a year, it'd be even better. Because once a year is a long time in between these kinds of things. But we did start today with a speaker from EAP on promoting kindness and compassion in the workplace. And then we had a presentation by Paul Mays and Rebecca Elder from his firm. Had a nice lunch provided by Guilderland Business. We were given the park again by the town of Guilderland for no charge, which was very nice, and we said thank you for that. And then one of our two speakers from the Adirondack Mountain Club was a Guilderland native. So it was just a good day. And I think particularly that hiking thing not only is good from a physical and team building point of view, but we're also learning about Guilderland geography, flora, fauna, etc. So it was a good day. And I thank the staff that put it together.
What about the water fountain,
That the G3
yeah,
suggested?
the G3 conducted that. Is that as safe, and is there some kind of problems with the quality of water? The water fountain, whereas what you have now, doesn't have those problems.
Generally not, yeah. So we have looked at the price of these wall-mounted water fountains is not quite the right word, dispensers, I guess. Like people mostly fill up a container at them rather than leaning over to drink at them like we did. Yeah, there are filtration units in them. My own tour of the Guilderland Water Department, they claimed that Guilderland tap water is cleaner than bottled water to begin with. However, nobody uses the drinking fountain in the staff area to the extent that it's turned off, and that's why we have these fountains, or these bottles. And that's what I've asked, like why, I was told by people that it didn't taste good, so I want to know why before I think about buying these things, which are about $900 each.
They dump in the water, so
Right.
you take out that chlorine taste.
One would hope, yeah, but unless there's, some pipe all the way back that is providing that taste.
So the taste is probably chlorine, or not chlorine, whatever they use like chlorine.
We get something every year about how the water system of Guilderland has all these impurities and chemicals. So there is some problem with water.
I don't know, I just read the supervisor's column in last month's Our Town, and I can't remember exactly what he said about water, but it's, and I think the town water is pretty good myself. But at any rate, I was thinking about putting one of these in the public hallway and seeing how it worked there before I would put one in the staff hallway, except that there's a economy of scale for doing it wise. The other little thing is, what costs so much money with the bottle system that we have now is that it's got hot or cold water, and keeping that water hot 24 hours a day is what's costing money. I've asked Lou to look at these units that have been suggested and see if any of them have a hot water function, because I think staff do get tea out of them, so.
You can just get a fire stuff, put it in the microwave.
Yeah, you can put it in the microwave.
Yeah.
But, I mean, at our house, we have water without refrigeration at all. You just
Right.
put the water in the thing, you get Home Depot and pour out your water. I mean, I don't think water has to be refrigerated. It goes warm at your desk anyway, you don't drink it. all the
Yeah,
time.
don't drink it all right away, so.
Personally, I don't think you need to refrigerate or heat it.
Well, they're, I think, $968 per unit, and we're talking about 3 of them. The back hallway, the front hallway, and apparently, I've worked here for 4.5 years and didn't know there was a short drinking fountain in the youth department. But anyway, somehow I missed that one. But,
I
so,
assume those aren't filtered.
no, it's just regular old drinking fountain. Is the filter, okay, so we'll look at that. So. Make sure it's actually saving money. So. The other thing is I'm reluctant to do this before we know whether we're remodeling the whole building.
Right.
You know? It's $3,000, you know. And so it would save $2,000 a year. I suppose I could ask Paul if he cares, you know. I mean, neither of those 2 main public hallways is slated to change too much, or public and staff hallway are slated to change too much. So there's some questions there, but I'll ask the questions that I haven't asked yet.
The vehicle and charging stations are things that we've been discussing
Right.
for a long time, too.
Right, so vehicle charging stations, the reason the students suggested those is that if you install them and you make a decision to charge people for the power, it can be a revenue source. But according to their study, it'd be a revenue source of about $500 a year. They think it would be more a public service than a revenue source. They also said that they got some sort of inside information from NYSERDA that beginning on July 20th, there'd be a state program to get these things for free. So I'm just kind of hanging back from that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we were waiting to see what the town wants to do.
Right, that's the other thing is that the Mercy Care Lane revamp, the latest on that, and actually that should have been in my buildings and grounds report. So Mr. Barber, first of all, says the sidewalks from SEFCU up to the library will probably be August. And then when you read the article in the Altamont Enterprise about Mercy Care Lane, you know, he's very optimistic, but of course doesn't say when the road is going to open, because I think there's a lot beyond his control about when it's going to open. But the things he said to me privately about the stretch from Western Avenue to the back of Spark, is that the owner, St. Peter's, has submitted a preliminary plan to redo their parking lot and the road, but hasn't submitted a final plan. And they have to submit a final plan for town approval before they can begin any work. And a few months ago, we thought that work was going to be taking place in May or June, but it's not. You know? Yeah, so it's a wait and see, really. We are about to put our water service in from underneath Mercy Care Lane, and the town knows that, and that it's good to get it in before they do any road work anyway. So, but it's a wait and see. You know? Every day we look back there and we pull in, hope to see a big paving vehicle, but haven't seen one yet.
Well, now that Mark is back, you know, we might ask him about the, you know, lack of an article in the Altamont Enterprise a week or two ago.
About,
The
About the Gilman Library.
the the regular weekly
The
article.
library.
Oh, I
they
don't
say
know.
did
It
not
may have
appear.
been a space thing, or, I don't know. I'll
But
have
we
to
sent
get back.
them, you know, we
Yeah.
sent our
It was in
weekly
the back.
press release.
I thought it was in the back.
Yeah.
I read this week's and last week's today.
If you're talking about a week and a half ago, that was when, right, got it. That was when we were gearing up for the DA's presentation. It was going to be for the Gildan Public Library, the Bethlehem Public Library. I spoke to Melissa Hale Spencer, and she said she had received, and that was all we're going to talk about. She had received the press release from the district attorney's office, so that got run as a straight news article. The question to me was, do you want us to run the district attorney's press release as a straight news article, or run the library as just a regular library thing? So that's where that was. That article that was upper left-hand, on the left-hand page, it was the DA's press release. So that talked about the thing that they were doing at Arbor Hill, Guilderland, I believe Clifton Park, and Bethlehem. That was it.
So that's my director's report.
Make a motion to accept the Brooks report.
Well, actually, we can, I just want a couple questions, but we can accept them first. It's not dependent on that. So it sounds like the Star Wars trivia was a good event?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Ann is here. Is anyone else here?
Yeah.
Noreen attended, yep. So, it was just completely awesome, and thank you. So,
Now, those trivia events seem like they draw a lot of people.
Yeah.
I've seen a
They
couple,
really do.
right?
That was a lot, that was a big crowd, I thought.
and then, generation, a lot of people in the generation that I think we are somewhat challenged with, so, you know, like young adults, is there a better way to say that? Like, people that aren't in school and aren't retired, you know?
Yeah.
So,
That's us.
and all generations were there that night too, though, you know, like there were some kids and, you know, I don't know if you guys wrote your own trivia or found it, but it was excellent trivia.
Mix, yeah.
So, great costumes, great, refreshments. Then I had to announce during the intermission that there was a tornado warning or something. You know, so I had to remind people where all the rooms are in the building without windows, because that's where you want to go. And thankfully, that was a weird, quick storm that moved through in 5 minutes. But it was just a really nice event. A Friday night?
It was Friday, May 4th.
May 4th, May the 4th be with you. You know, all the trivia we've done, I mean, I've only been to 2 of them, I think, but they're just, people love trivia, you know. I think you guys love putting them together, too, it seems
Yeah,
like.
it's a lot of work, but it's
Mhm.
fun,
Mhm.
actually, it's great fun.
I see here you got a new self-checkout, kiosk. How are those working out?
They are working out well, so, we have one in the children's department and one in the, main lobby with another one on order. That's what I think you're signing
Okay.
for there. That'll go on the other side of the main door. So since we got them, since we got the new ones, the use of the self-checkouts is up 8%. And I believe I remember right that it amounts to around 20% of overall CERT. Phil had sent out something, but they're working pretty well. I mean, they work very well, but people are kind of embracing them. And the maze plan has 3 by the front door, so we're just sort of gearing up a little bit in case that happens. And also, you know, I may not be the greatest person in terms of purchasing yet. We have a lot of progress we need to make on our purchasing system, but it just seemed like something we could pay for now so that we wouldn't have to pay for it later. The old one was very antiquated, and you may remember in a meeting that I celebrated Sean because there was a service agreement on the old one, and we couldn't get a part without updating the service agreement. We had to pay $5,000 for 2 years, where we had chosen not to pay that before we would buy the part, and then Sean bought the whole machine from somebody for $300 on eBay, which was awesome. But there's been enough change in these machines, both in functionality and in design, and how how little space they take up, that when we saw them up at the NILO conference, we decided to try to buy some. So,
Sounds good. Does anyone else have any questions? No? Okay, there was a motion on the table by Chris, seconded by Herb. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion adopted. Where are we now? New business. You had a couple things you
I
wanted to
got a couple things to mention. I just want to read 3 short notes from students with special needs that work with Lisa Pitkin. I think 2 of them work in a Guilderland School District program, and 1 of them works in a BOCES program, and they always do thank you notes for their work, which tends to be about a semester long. Dear Ms. Lisa, thank you for working with me at Guilderland Library this past semester. I learned many tasks, including stamping books and putting books in boxes. The workplace was very great. I enjoyed my work assignment. Sincerely, Sebastian. And dear Lisa, thank you for working with me at Guilderland Library. I learned many tasks, including dusting shelves, stamping books, and looking for books. The workplace was very quiet. I enjoyed my work assignment as library helper. That's from Lauren. And then Tim writes the same intro, and then I learned many tasks, including crossing out barcodes on books and straightening bookshelves. The workplace was easy to work at. So it's
that's
Lisa
nice.
asked me, Lisa Pitkin asked me to read these just to remind you guys that we make an effort to be of service to everybody in the community, including those with special needs. And these kids are. They're just nice to have around. You know, I was going to say they're a lot of fun, but they're just kind of nice to have around. Another item I want to do is I want to pass around for you each of you take one of these sheets. We have some new library cards that we've started issuing today, and the way this developed is that I kind of asked my staff to try to create a little bit of a culture of innovation. And so Phil Berardi, who heads up CERC, kind of started this project with his CERC clerks. I want to say Donna Kushbu and Singyo and Luba. And so they came up with these little slogans. And I was presented with these slogans, and I approved 12 of the 13 that I was presenting. And then I asked if they cost any more than the current library cards, and they said no. So I don't know, Mark, I haven't had a chance to check with you whether Phil has asked you to publicize these in any way or anything, but they've got a little bit of a nice little edge or attitude to them, you know.
What we're gonna do is gonna use them as interstitials, like brief things up on the monitors. There'll be posters that the CERC staff is putting up on the circulation desk to show how these things are going to be, that people can get these things. They've got a really innovative way of letting people pick them. And I'll use it, you'll see it when you're driving by on the sign out front. And we're also going to push them on the website. It's a really cool idea, and I love them. I think they're just great.
Who came up with this?
I think
It was that whole crew, yeah.
I think so. They're
Yeah.
working on children's cards.
Yeah.
Are they?
Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
And it started, Phil came to me and said, you know, we're starting to get low on cards. I was like, all right, well, what do you want to do? And then he said, I'll get back to you. And a couple of weeks later, he said, what do you think of this? I love it. So, you know.
Yeah, that was my favorite.
Which one?
Don't judge a book by its movie.
That's a good one.
Steal this book. Yep, yeah, that would be clever, but not so great.
Thanks for sharing.
This is nice, this is very nice.
Well, it's
So,
Phil and
and
his
then I have
team.
a third item, which was, so I was meeting with some CERC staff the other day, and Roseanne, you were in that meeting, and Kim.
Yeah.
And one suggestion was made that in the July board meeting, we always approve the annual calendar. And the staff, at least in that meeting, and then I later asked my department heads about it, and they agreed. The staff feels that it might be wise to close the library at 6 o'clock on Friday nights, or at least these 2 units of the staff feel that. And I said, well, you know, you're bringing it up at a perfect time because at the July meeting, we talked about our yearly schedule. And I said, typically I know we've talked about this as a board before, and typically when we do talk about it, we think, well, you know, it would be a way to, you know, you'd save some money because you'd be closing earlier, and at the same time, you'd not be wasting really anyone's time or money because the usage is very light after 6 p.m. on Fridays. I did bring it up with the youth services head, Beth Rienti, and said, you know, you do Friday night movies. She said we could do Saturday morning movies or Saturday afternoon movies. But I told the CERT people that I was meeting with that typically when we've talked about it in the past, you guys have almost always said, you know, we could balance this by being open at either 9 or 9:30 in the morning on weekdays. And I asked the CERT staff what they thought of that, and by and large, they were fine with it, as were the department heads. So what I want to recommend is that you tell us to go get you some numbers about usage of the library, you know, after 6 on Fridays. That would be germane to the decision if you want to consider this for July. Like I don't think we just say, hey, let's do it at the
No,
June
I
meeting. So,
I would love
you
to
know.
get numbers. I've been a believer in this for years. Do you get a sense that the public wants us to be open earlier during the weekdays?
Yes,
Yeah.
they're lining up outside.
They're
Fine.
lining up,
Yeah.
and especially, you know, in the summer, everybody's up earlier.
Mm.
It is, by 10 o'clock, you can't even get to open the doors or even turn over the sign, because it's so packed, people waiting, and they're watching the clock for 10 o'clock. Exactly.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I
So
figured
this
there
would
would be,
be
but I
just
just wanted to
for
make
July?
sure.
No,
Consider
it's
just
open
being open
all
early
the time.
one of these days.
Oh, throughout the year.
On Friday,
And
always
open at
open
9
9 every
You
day.
go early those days.
Might that be
It
confusing?
is confusing.
Have
Yeah,
different opening signs?
Yeah, Albany has that stuff, and it's,
I mean, if we're closing early on Friday, that would be confusing, I suppose, too.
well, we want to know how much money it would save us to, you know, close early
All the
on
payroll.
Fridays.
Yep.
Whether that money would be spent again, you know, by opening a half hour, an hour earlier.
Sure.
And, you know, what that would cost.
Mhm.
Well, we saved
But we
3
come in
hours
at 9
Friday.
every day anyway, just the library doors don't open until 10.
Would you find that to, I mean, you probably have to still come in a little earlier than you open, but do you find that time period between when you open and when you get in, when you open to be productive, or, you know, would you be okay with kind of that being shrunk so that,
We could shrink it.
yeah?
We could definitely shrink. Actually, I mean, if you look at some of the, and I can get you the list of libraries. East Greenbush opens at 9. They open 9 to 9 every night except Friday. Bethlehem is 9 o'clock and they're open till 9 on Friday. That's about the only library. Colony opens at 9 and they're closed at 6 on Friday. Most of the bigger libraries do close at 6 on Friday.
And I
It
think,
would,
you go ahead, Barbara.
it'd be okay then to open the library at 9:30 and let the people come in at 9:30? Sure.
Or even at 9 too. I
Sure.
mean, Bethlehem, we have a person that works part-time at Bethlehem. They designate like one person to come in, turn the computers on, do what they have to do, and they only come in 15 minutes or half an hour earlier, and then they probably leave earlier if they're full-time. You know, like they'll leave at maybe 4:30. If they work 8:30, say or, you know,
But our
4:30.
computers automatically.
Yeah,
turn on.
everything comes up quickly, and it doesn't take that long. A lot of people, I mean, I'm here usually 10 of 9, almost every day.
Well, I'm just thinking
So-
if you reduce the hours by, 3 on Fridays?
4.
If you,
Oh, 3,
Three,
yes,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
and then if we open the doors at 9:30, then you're almost balancing.
It's
Oh,
almost
right,
an
yeah.
exact-
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It would still give you guys some time to
Yeah,
Right.
do what you
but
need
there,
to do.
there
not
is a
gonna
lot
cost
of
us
people in the
anymore.
hallways.
That's not right.
Yeah.
Every
Right.
week,
But it's not
a
gonna
lot
save
of
us,
special
so-
need people groups come in, people who drop off their kids at school wanna come in. You know what I mean? They drop their kids off, they just wanna make a detour and come right in at that.
So you actually, sounds like you wouldn't have any problems
No,
when
we
you're
don't-
in at 9.
No, no.
Well, I would guess, yeah, come back, look at some numbers, some staff feedback, but, you know, I would personally like be open at 9 and closed at 6. I've always felt that 6 on Friday for a long time was good. good, so.
And that staff or board can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you really wanted to have an event on Friday night, you could still have it, you know,
Yeah.
like a trivia night, right?
Right.
So, that is one of the strengths of the building design, is that even if the doors to the library proper are closed, you've still got restrooms, available to the meeting rooms,
Yep,
so.
yep, yep.
So,
I think that's great.
okay, so that was, I think my only other new business item. Yeah.
So, does anyone have any thoughts or comments they want to say on? All right, to old business.
Okay, so the board meeting schedule, we did the doodle poll, and you guys picked the third Thursday of the month, for, next year. But Brian and I in emails just thought that rather than announcing it to you in an email, he would give you the opportunity to discuss it now to make sure that everyone was okay. There were 10 people. I honestly don't know if we surveyed Mike and Barry, but I believe we did.
Yeah, we did.
And 10 people said they could come on the third Thursday of the month. So I'm certainly good with that. It solves my request to you, which is to get that extra week in there. But you need I guess you don't need to take any kind of a resolution until July, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to bring it up in case if someone wanted to say anything, or they had a concern or something, so. Okay, so I guess we'll,
Have we said anything to the foundation yet?
No.
I guess it's probably my job as president.
I think so.
They're aware.
They're aware?
They're aware?
Well, the president's aware.
Okay.
Well, I gotta call it. Okay, and mark that on my to-do list.
Other than the fact that we have we encourage the foundation to possibly send people to board meetings, and we do send a liaison, the board sends a liaison to the foundation meetings. Other than that, there's no reason that they couldn't meet on the same night. So, you know.
Well, then I think.
Yeah, it just means that you couldn't be there.
Yeah,
I think
me and
it's-
Mark, yeah.
Yeah, you and Mark, and, being liaison, and,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
true.
I
That's
think,
true.
I mean,
Sorry.
certainly they can do what they want, but, let's see what they.
Now, what was wrong with the second week for us, so that we didn't conflict with them, why didn't we do that?
Well, I had made the recommendation, partly in working with Carol and David, that what we were doing sometimes 3 months a year is when the second Thursday fell as early as the 8th, it's financially almost not enough time to close those books. And in terms of the stats for programming and circulation, it's also tight to get those statistics all together that quickly. And so we just all felt like we could use that extra week or 2 weeks. Like that was part of our, we were happy to do the fourth Thursday as well, or Wednesday or Tuesday. We just kind of wanted it pushed back a little later, mostly for the financial side, but it does make every department head or everyone writing a report, it makes their job easier to get it done. You know, the report covers, like this report covers May, right? You know, so although I always write mine, including the last 9 or 10 days. But we just like that cushion, basically, is kind of what it is. So it remains our recommendation as an admin and department head team to push it back. And as we've said in this meeting before, there must be other days in the month that the foundation can meet. We hope there are, you know. So, anyway.
Take care of that, Mercy Care?
Oh, well, there's one other thing on the board meeting schedule that there's 2 other things actually. One is that now that Davy Johnson has pulled out, you know, do you guys want to switch back to July 19th for the board meeting, or do you want to keep it at the 24th? I'm indifferent myself.
I'm doing the 24th, I already put it on my calendar. so-
Okay, stay on the 24th. And the third thing, we had a finance committee meeting in here at 6, and as we were congregating, somebody said, boy, I wish the board meetings were at 6. And then somebody else said 6:30. Sure be nice to get out of here a half an hour or an hour earlier, so.
Always do it earlier. Personally.
Is there a feeling?
I don't know, it's a little difficult, no, maybe.
I mean, it'd certainly be difficult for me, but I'm always amendable.
only do if like this is convenient for everyone else. I mean,
It's your call.
What, 6:30, what? 6:30?
yeah, that's fine.
It's fine, if it's really inconvenient, just keep it at 7.
Because the second Thursday is, you know, I had some
We're not gonna
trouble.
get out early.
Because of your UHLS or?
The youth class is Wednesday, and I have other things I have.
On the second Thursday.
What's the third?
It's the third. So you wanna,
Let's go with 6:30.
okay, and does that, but that gets decided in July, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's take a look at it in
So-
July. Can you send an email out to everyone
Mhm.
so that everyone here can think about the 6:30? Because
Sure.
I bet that is in here, can think about it. This is a major objection.
It's always better to fresher earlier.
Yeah.
Well, same with Caitlin.
My mind is
Yeah,
works.
Yeah, yeah, I don't, yeah, I mean, it's probably 5, but I don't know if she had, what her feelings are, so that's why I kind of wanted to check. Yes.
Karen too.
Yeah. So
Well,
just-
Carol can always come later.
Supposed to say Karen.
Karen
Oh,
Parker.
Karen,
Yeah.
So, yeah, are those the ones who are missing?
Yeah, I think so.
Then they work downtown, so I don't know what time to finish.
Okay, so we'll take a look, another look at that, but seriously considering 6:30. Okay. Was there another one?
We've got the fine free for kids, so,
So is the next meeting gonna be 6:30 or?
yeah, what do you wanna do for the time on the July 24th meeting?
Should always see the other.
Well, isn't the July meeting 6:30 anyway? Because
Yeah,
we have
isn't
the
it?
full
Oh,
one.
yes.
We have the full one at 6:30, right? And we have the, or is that,
We have the.
or do we normally do it 7:30? I forget, we have the annual
Annual
meeting.
meeting's at 6:30.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
So, yeah, we start at
Let's do
6:30
that.
anyway,
Yeah.
so, okay, so annual meeting's at 6:30.
Yeah, the annual.
There, we have an annual meeting to start off, and then we have our actual, board meeting at
Right.
7.
What is the annual meeting?
We like nominate the president,
Oh,
vice
okay.
president, do we do anything else?
Like a
Resolutions.
organizational meeting?
Swear in my name.
Swearing.
Oath,
It's an
resolution.
organizational.
Yeah, exactly, it's an organization, yeah.
Okay. I had it on the calendar for 6:30 anyway. That's what you told me? You tell me, I'll
Look
look
that
that
up.
up.
So, I'm not sure.
Okay, fine free?
Fine free.
Okay,
What
so,
about Mercy Care, you wanna do that next?
well, you know, the Mercy Care update, basically, we kinda did, so.
Just back to the annual meeting?
Yeah.
I don't think we vote on the elections there, we vote on them at the regular board meeting.
What do we do at the end?
The annual meeting is to go over the
Resolutions.
reports for the whole year, what
Yeah.
Oh.
each committee
Okay.
and board the whole.
Okay.
So what I did in the past is have everybody submit written reports. We don't do anything.
Okay, yeah. Committee chairs, submit written reports, okay, you got it, write down, no, you know, I'm gonna email you all that too.
And it's easier, just you submit your written report, you just sit there.
Okay, fine free?
I think it's a requirement that we have one. It doesn't have to be 6:30 though, I don't know why we just don't do it at 6:45.
Why can't you just call the July board meeting, have one meeting, and just call it the annual meeting?
And just start with the annual meeting and go into the board meeting,
Okay.
just do that.
You fine with me?
We don't wanna move it back.
Was there any reason that, Marty, did you know that we always had 2?
Yes.
There was a reason?
I don't know the reason,
Oh.
but yes, we always had 2, I'm sorry.
I think it just says we have to have an annual meeting.
Oh, so, but our annual meeting could also be our.
Could start right
Yes.
before, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So annual meeting at 6:45?
Yeah, and it's just essentially merged with our normal meeting, so now we just have one meeting. Okay.
Why not 6:30?
Yeah, mine is 6:30.
Yeah, we're at 6:30.
All right.
Yeah, let's keep it 6:30.
Okay.
Thank
You
you.
better check with people that aren't here.
We just gotta let them know, that's what we're doing. They
You
want
always
to know.
know you're doing it.
I'm saying we're changing the time completely.
We're not saying complete, we're just saying for
And I think we've always
We'll
had
let
our
them know.
annual meeting at 6:30,
Yeah.
so I don't feel bad.
Just about if we go for the, you mean for
Oh,
the full
yes,
meeting,
yes,
that
and
we discussed.
yes, that, and then that, and we're gonna send an email out so people know.
To me, that's gonna be the same email, it's gonna say our July 24th meeting starts at 6:30, and one of the things we'll vote on July 24th is whether all board meetings will start at 6:30.
That sounds perfect.
That
So-
sounds good, yeah.
All right, fine free. So, you remember, I think it was the last time we met in the Helderberg room, that I brought up this idea of going fine-free completely, or going fine-free for kids. And haven't put it back on the agenda for, I think, 4 months or so, but I have been doing a fair amount of work on it with Joe Burke, who's the director of the Altamont Library. And for those that are new, or not quite new, in the building, one quick thought about the Altamont Library is that it's a very unique relationship between us and them. We are both in the Upper Hudson Library System, so that's not unique. There are 29 libraries in that system. But we're the only case I know of where people people who live in the Altamont service area are served by 2 public libraries. And my understanding is that everyone in Guilderland pays something, obviously to this library, but also to the Altamont Library. So to me, that's an opportunity to work together. You know.
The only reason everybody in Guilderland pays something is if the town contributes.
Right, right, and they do. So,
But
there is a, I believe, an Altamont village tax for the
Yes.
library.
right, there is as well.
Only Altamont.
Yeah, yep.
You know, they're governed differently.
Mhm.
So this is a small district library, and what is that association?
True. True, but the basic point I'm trying to make is, if a patron lives in Altamont, they are both Altamont's patron and
Yes.
our patron.
Yes.
So when we think about doing something groundbreaking, it would be to our advantage to work together with them. And I didn't mean to lead with this point, but Altamont is pretty much going to go fine-free for kids. And I think they're pretty much going to go fine-free for everybody. And they're certainly extending us the courtesy of giving us some time to discuss that. So I am not ready to make a recommendation to you tonight, but I have read maybe 8 to 10 articles on this in the last 3 months, and I've got some quick highlights for you. And my goal in giving you this information is to ask you to consider this, and I haven't asked Brian yet, but to eventually make a decision on, I believe I'm going to be recommending that we go fine-free for kids as a first step toward going fine-free for everybody. So in the year 2017, Guilderland collected just shy, about $200 less than $13,000 in kids' fines and fees. And this represents less than 1/3 of 1% of our budget. So Altamont incidentally collected $553 in kids' fines in 2017. A little easier for them. Their total fine collection for the year was between 3,000 and 4,000, and ours was 44,000. Now, Library Journal article. Yeah. Totally different. Yeah. Yep. But worth comparing. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to say what they do, we need to do. I'm just trying to give you information. Currently, 5% of public libraries in the United States have no fines for kids. 31% are considering it, according to an article in Library Journal. Of the 5% that have no fines for kids, 14% of all circulations are returned late. I don't happen to know what percentage of our circulations are returned late, but I can find that out. 88% of those 14% are returned within 1 week of the original due date. And according to Library Journal, it costs, we're what they would call a mid-sized public library, about $594 a month to collect funds. So I don't know how.
Where does that number come from?
I don't know. I was just about to say, I don't know how they put that together. Some libraries have done some alternative things. They've allowed children to read down their fines by reading, for $5 an hour or whatever the fine might be. Some libraries have allowed people to work their fines off. Interesting concept. One article I read recently talked about a library which adopted a policy at the board level called WAIVE, W-A-I-V-E, and request. So they had their circulation system continue to calculate the fines, and then when people presented themselves at the circ counter, they said, we have abolished fines, but you had a fine of $1.60 on this material. Would you like to make a donation? And that library got about 85% of the fine revenue through donation. So that's a theoretical possibility. The, so,
I'm
yeah.
kinda.
That doesn't seem to make sense.
Well, I'm about to say why to abolish it, okay? So the generally considered pros of abolishing kids' fines are it increases circulation. And one reason it increases circulation is because it improves the relationship between the customers and the library. There's not an automatic adversarial relationship, which there can be. And by the way, when I'm done, I'd be happy to ask the staff, if you're happy to ask the staff, what they think. There's goodwill generated in the community, and I might add that, you know, where we generate goodwill lately is when we do something innovative. And so if we're gonna be asking people to vote on something innovative in a different way in May, maybe we wanna get out ahead of that and say, we're here, you know, trying to get you to use our library, to remove barriers to you using our library. Revenue from fines across the industry is greatly reduced over the last 10 years anyway, not because 5% of libraries don't have fines, but because of a couple things. Most libraries now send out emails to people saying your stuff is due in 2 days, your stuff is due yesterday, and it really cuts down on fine revenue. And ebooks don't have fines because they automatically either renew or disappear as holdings, and quite a few certs are e-certs. The children's fines are seen in the profession as a barrier to access, especially for low-income families. I think I certainly don't know how many times you guys have spent near a cert desk, but you see dramatic situations where parents are very upset at kids because $5.30 is owed, so they can't check anything out. It just does not create the kind of atmosphere. You want your customer to leave happy, and you don't want your customer to leave not being able to check out a book. So at the very least, we should continue to raise our threshold. We should, if anyone comes in here for a book, they should get it, is kind of my bottom line. One thing I've suggested to Joe Burke is that we might consider, I might ask you to consider doing away with children's fines as of July 1 or December 31 of 2018. July 1 is the beginning of the new fiscal year, which we've already budgeted for, and we've budgeted to receive those $13,000 in children's fines. However, Altamont is ready to go, and I think if Altamont goes first and we do it 6 months or a year or 18 months later, we're just going to kind of look a little, you know, not innovative, I guess is one way to put it. And then when we write our budget for 2019-20, we might consider going fine-free on all levels. What some libraries have done is their boards have chosen to experiment for 6 months or a year with fine-free. They are generally finding they aren't losing material. As we mentioned the last time we talked about this, you just kind of ramp up the fee, basically. Like you give them 60 days, and if the item isn't back, you get a bill for it. You can choose a different number of days, 90 if you want. That tends to make the stuff come back for the people who aren't in the 88%, who bring it back within the 1 week. So, like, if you're concerned about the fact that you've already budgeted the money, which is a legitimate concern, certainly, we can always, you know, kind of push it back a little bit. I talk to Joe. I don't talk to Joe's board members, although I know some of them, but I don't sort of presume to do business with their board. And basically, they're like, we'd love to do it with you. We are going to do it ourselves at some point. And the suggestion Joe and I have come up with is that Joe and I sit down perhaps with one board member from each institution, and then from our side I've thought of either Phil Berardi as head of CERT and or Mark as public relations person, and get you an actual proposal of what we want to do. So,
Let me ask you a question.
yeah.
children's books, is there a waiting list for new releases like there are with adults?
You know, that's a darn good
Not-
question.
Not really, no,
Not
not
really?
really.
Okay.
What's the,
Okay.
what's the limit in which like you're, you know, you don't, get books out? Or-
$5.
Five.
$5.
$5, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as far as Goodwill goes, don't you already have like an amnesty day?
We do
which-
that occasionally. We don't do it
So,
all the time on the same week every year or anything like that, so. And I do think it generates goodwill when we do that, and that is something that I'd be happy to do more often.
We had food drop off for
Yeah,
once.
yeah,
We
no,
did
for
that.
food
That was
pantry,
really
yep,
successful.
I, with 6 grandkids, young grandkids, I take out a ton of children's books
Mhm.
and videos. A lot of them, I go online and order from other libraries,
Mhm.
okay? So to answer the first question about, there's a lot of new books that come out, especially Paw Patrol these days, that all my grandkids are into. As the new book, you know, that when I order, I get told I'm 4th in line, 5th in line, 20th, whatever, so there is waiting list for kids' books. Maybe not as much as new adult books, but there is. But my bigger question is, now, you know, 40, 50 years ago, you went to a library, you took out the stuff from that library, you returned it to that library.
Mhm.
Again, I do a ton of ordering online, and, you know, you have the thing, I'm on the wrong side there, but the wall that's all the books that have, other material too, that come in from other libraries.
Mhm.
So how would that work? If I have 10 children's books from different libraries, but I always get them out here and return them here.
Mhm.
So now if I return Albany Library books or Post and Kill Library books late,
Mhm.
You shouldn't have to pay
how,
them.
am I still gonna pay because they're not your books,
This-
our books?
This is
Or-
a discussion that's happening at the Directors Association as well. I need help from Roseanne and Kim, but I believe when you return an item here, and we collect a fine on it, if
We
it's
keep it.
somebody else's item, oh, we keep it.
We
Okay,
keep the
we
fine,
keep it.
we keep
Okay.
the fine, cause
Yep.
if they return our books to another library, they keep our fine.
Yeah.
The only thing we don't is like lost books.
Mhm.
You know, we send that.
Or late
online.
material of any
But
kind?
if you pick up any Albany, Bethlehem, any material
Yeah.
from any other library here and you return it here, you pay our fines.
Oh,
It's
okay.
where you pick up the material and where you return the material is where the fine scale is, I guess.
So
Whether
when-
it's 20 cents a day, whether it's $1 for
Okay,
a
so it wouldn't matter
DVD.
where the book, where
As
the
long as you
item
pick it up here and
originated
return
from,
it here.
if I get it here,
And you return
and then
it
I
here.
returned it here.
That's why we have other libraries that still charge $1 to rent a movie if they're late. That's why they return them here.
Oh,
Cause they
okay.
don't wanna pay, they'd rather pay the 20 cents
They'll
a day
request
versus
and have
$1.
it come here.
Yeah, okay.
What do we currently use to find money for that? I know, like-
It's a good question.
Just if you're eliminating that from.
It's just a revenue source. It isn't earmarked for any particular purpose in the.
So we have to cut back in other areas.
We would. I mean, if we collected $13,000 less, we'd spend $13,000
now,
less.
you also said it was like a goodwill thing, you know, and some people will look at it like, hey, you know, we're asking for money, you know, for, changes to the building.
Mhm.
But some people aren't gonna look at it that way. They're gonna be like, you know, you're just giving away stuff for free, and then you're gonna ask the town, you know, people, taxpayers for additional money.
Well, you're not giving away
You
any
know,
more.
you don't teach the
You have
kids
to pay for it.
responsibility by, excusing this, they have to learn that actions have consequences,
But what
Can I
if
ask
it's
the,
not-
can I ask the librarians what they think about this?
Yeah.
No, you don't wanna ask me.
But,
Okay.
but
You ask them.
we're not, we shouldn't, that's not up to us, we're not the parents of a child to teach
Right.
them a lesson to say, the book is late, now you have to take your allowances and pay the $3 or whatever, that's not up to the library, the library's a library, you just, you know.
Our job is to match the materials that people need or want to them. And it's up to the home to instill any
Well, it
values.
has an educational function too.
Right, to match the materials
Yeah, but-
with the
And
student
it's
or
all,
the
just
parent.
like the school, the library
they can't, it will
Right.
stop them from checking out.
Okay,
eventually.
so they will have to.
They're not
do
gonna,
it.
Are we gonna
Okay,
waste
yeah.
that?
we're not just gonna eat
No.
it, eat it.
Eventually, I mean.
Not
where
this
does
year.
it end?
Couple
They're
years.
paid.
No, where does it end though?
They're
I mean, I'm
paid.
saying, is you start with the kids, then
Yeah,
you can go
that's
through
good.
adults,
I
and then
think
eventually.
$2,000 should be paid.
I have a suggestion that we cut the children's fines and we cut the materials budget by the same amount. That way, if the public says, why are you cutting out this revenue, we say, well, we cut the expenses.
responsible people in town.
What we're saying, we're cutting the expenses as well.
Just fight your face.
Then
I'm
Exactly.
sorry. What I would like is, so you've clearly read a lot on this, and I actually would like to read a lot on this too,
Yep,
because I,
okay.
'cause I haven't really, I want to grasp my head around it as best I can, because personally, I like the selling point of, you're certainly keeping some kids from having Burks if they don't, their parents don't want to pay the fine, they can't pay the fine, or something like that. So I'm less concerned about the money.
Yeah.
So I'd like to read what kind of literature is out there and kind of compare it to our library. You had statistics about, what percent return books, if they don't have fines. So how does that factor in with our library?
Yep.
So.
Now, a couple things I want to say though, to get right in the middle of some of the thoughts the staff was expressing and then Herb's thought. We all have our concept of libraries, and for everyone probably in the room, we certainly grew up paying library fines and understanding that they are an element in a person learning responsibility, just like delivering papers is an element in a person learning responsibility. But I have to note, and you've got the mission statement right there, teaching responsibility is not in the mission statement. School libraries, as far as I know, anywhere, don't charge fines. And somehow they educate kids and make kids into better people and so forth. If you look at the history of libraries, 100 years ago, there was a library board sitting around a table recoiling at the notion that you would have best-selling fiction in a library, because reading best-selling fiction was not going to improve the reader. Libraries started as places in the United States that had this overt purpose to make people better people, and the fine system is a holdover in part from that. The way that same concern is addressed at the Directors Association, and people say, well, when my kid takes out a book from the library and it's time for it to go back, I look at my kid and I say, are you going to read this? Should I renew it? And if you're not going to renew it, should I take it back? Because somebody else probably wants it. And it really does seem to me as a parent more appropriate for me to do that work than for this staff to do that work. It's like when you go to I don't know if this is going to work as an analogy, but when we go to the recovery room later on tonight, the staff at the recovery room isn't going to say, I'm not sure you should have that second beer, because who knows what might happen, that's not their purview,
We're supposed to cut you off.
How that's
Yeah.
gonna
Probably wasn't the best
Yes, it is.
analogy, but.
To me, that's a home thing rather than a staff thing.
Is your proposal for just books, or is it for like all children's videos,
I think
children's?
it's for all
music?
materials because it would be
Okay.
too complicated to explain to
Yeah.
people if it was only.
And essentially, anyone under the age of 18 you wouldn't have to pay a fine, or
Well,
16 or
that's-
something.
I thought it was children's books. If I check out a child's item and return it late, it's fine free, right? Or is just a child's card?
So it wouldn't be people like there's a 15-year-old girl that is the daughter of a friend of mine who's checked out War and Peace, which is obviously not in the kids' collection. So I think that would be the dividing line.
Okay,
Right,
so it'd
that
be
would-
collection based. It
It's
wouldn't-
collection based, that's the way I understood it.
That may take a lot more
Otherwise, parents will start looking.
So that's true.
Why don't you just know
Good
it's fine
practice.
then?
So,
Because then I gotta-
covered children's videos, children's music.
I'd be all over that.
So you want me to give you guys the same stuff I've been
Yeah,
reading?
I guess
Yep.
that what I would
So-
ask is, and I just won't read it as much in email form as if you could print it off and put it in my
Sure.
box and
Yep.
put it in there. I mean, you said I think you've read 8 articles.
Yep.
I don't expect you to tomorrow, but like I have a long trip this weekend. Like, it would be perfect for me to kind of read along.
Sure.
I don't mean do it, but yeah, I'm sure I'll long
Maybe
trips in the future.
Are you all into print?
I said, maybe Tim, you could record it, and he's got a long trip, and he.
There you go. Yeah, Tim, I want to hear your voice. That's how much I enjoy these meetings.
Kids will live off their fines by recording.
There you go.
Read it.
Yeah, read it tonight.
Put it in square form. Once upon a time,
Yep.
there was a library.
I like the idea of making them read it off because I think you kind of keep in the our component of keeping responsibility while still essentially giving them for free. I don't know how it's enforced or anything, but
Yeah, I know.
maybe
Why
you
don't
could
you
break
think
a
of
book.
lowering the
Yeah,
fine
yeah.
instead of 20 cents, 10 cents?
What is reading the fine away? I think you said that.
Well, I don't know exactly how it works, but I've seen it referenced in articles where if a kid owes $20, then maybe he reads for 4 hours at $5 an hour.
How do you know he was gonna read for 12?
I don't know how to do that, yeah, so.
We've
Well,
got
you'd have
kids
some
come in
time.
and-
Maybe you can make them in the library or something. I don't know, but like I'm sure someone's going to come to
Whenever there's any
Sounds
kind
like
of
more
reading
work.
program, you take
I'd rather
it
pay
to
Yeah.
I like
the.
the word,
Yeah.
it's on the library. I feel like
So I'll get you guys those
Why don't you
articles.
just consider lowering the fine? If it's 20 cents a book, get down to 10 cents.
Well, that's a point that Kim's making over here that's made in one of these articles too, which is that, as far as I know, every cert desk cuts deals with people. They
We
want,
do it all the
We
time.
do
they
it all
want
the
people
time.
to be able to check out, so they say you owe $5.50, if you pay $1, you'll be under the threshold. Or if they owe, sometimes we get
$50,
situations.
we might go half. I've
Yeah,
gone
yeah,
half
yep,
from people
yep,
a
mhm.
lot.
So we get money and we get a patron back, like, think about, like, when you read these articles, one of the things you'll keep seeing is fines, even at levels of like $10 or so, make people go away.
Yeah,
And I
right.
don't
Yeah.
want us to be in the business
Yeah.
of people going
The
away.
new outlook, and especially if your child's, the fine is punitive.
Mhm.
And it discourages you from wanting to read, which is what we're all about.
I mean, on the Little League field, we don't fine people for making an error, even though we're trying to teach them not to,
Yeah, they make an error, they gotta start reading.
Alright, well, I mean, I would like to consider not to read.
Okay.
I guess it's,
I'll be falling asleep for 4 hours reading books. I'm so kidding, I swear. Make a little room.
yep, okay. No, no. So minutes of our last board meeting. I'm sure you all looked them over intently.
Make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I second.
Alright, all those in favor, does Barry have to abstain?
I'm gonna abstain because I was not at that meeting.
Abstain, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, please note Barry and Peter's abstention.
Got it. Who seconded?
That was me.
It was adopted. Okay,
Good night, Tim.
executive session first, and then take the break?
Sure.
Can I get a motion to go into executive session? Peter? Why?
Personnel actions?
Personnel actions.
No.
So Peter, seconded by Jason. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break now that we're in executive session, but,